In a lot of ways, the past is a terrible place full of terrible people and horrific events. This cynicism permeates this thesis statement and arrives with a thundering irony. Man, you used to could buy all sorts of stuff for just $1. From convenience store snacks to gallons of gas, $1 would cover your behind like no other. Yahoo Finance released this article showing a small selection of items that were less than $1 based on birth year. As a totally cringe child of the 90s, it's astounding to see things like shares of Disney and Microsoft alongside more mundane items like a 2-liter soda and half a pound of chicken breast. But when I think about bang for my buck, my mind immediately snatches hold of the subject of so many of my daydreams: the McDonald's value menu. Now, this here is a buffoon's idea of heavenly perfection, and by gunnet if I ain't that buffoon. Just look at her, sitting there perfect as the vision of the sunset on a breezy evening. $1 McDouble, fries, side salad, drink, cookies, and, most importantly, the premier menu item, the king himself, the McChicken. In this video, we endeavor to find out what Steam Spring Sale game is the McChicken of video games, subcategory, March 2026. My criteria are clear. I am only purchasing games that are currently less than $1 United States on Valve's Steam Online Marketplace platform. Due to the grab bag myopic scope, if it fits it sits nature of this limitation, many of the games covered today will focus a more critical lens on these sweet baby darlings. To be clear, there are no free games on this list because Sweet Summer Child is the McChicken free? More concretely, it feels like cheating. So the games must cost somewhere between 1 US cent and $1 US to be up for consideration. Once we have completed our review of these 20 unique games, I will compile our findings into a final rankings list to, for certain, definitely, scientifically prove once and for all which game is our McChicken king or queen. I don't mind either way. First, there was ham on rye, then peanut butter and jelly, then turkey and cheese. Jesus, there's a lot of great combo sandwich metaphors, aren't there? Anyway, Portal plus Polybridge, or I guess in this case, Bridge Constructor, is a match made oh so serenely in heaven above. In Bridge Constructor Portal, players are tasked with solving physics-based puzzles that revolve primarily around the construction of, well, structurally sound bridges. This is accomplished by building support beams beneath or tension wirings above said bridges. Hijinks ensue as bridges you were certain were sound crash under their own literal weight or the more spiritual weight of your own hubris. This is a pretty straightforward and simple to grasp, yet difficult to master system. However, the twist is that alongside the bridge construction mechanics, there is an ample dosage of Portal flavoring. Initially, I thought the titular Portals would serve as the only Portal series callbacks, but was pleasantly surprised to find all aspects of Portaldom alive and well. And these elements are not just set dressing. It isn't like Polybridge nay Bridge Constructor has received a new wallpapering. No, from companion cubes to turrets to dematerializing laser walls, the Portal canon is all accounted for and assigned to its own intriguing mechanical twist on the base gameplay. Puzzles are thoughtfully designed. With each successful level clearance, my ego grew in turn. With 60 total levels and an additional 30-level DLC pack, there is plenty of bridge building Portal puzzling for enticed players. To wrap this package together before many levels, Portal fans are treated to a slew of snarky and sardonic lines of dialogue from everyone's favorite kinda evil robot lady GLaDOS. Overall, the attention to detail from a Portal perspective in conjunction with rock-solid mechanics makes for a shockingly excellent puzzle game outing. Developed by Airtight Games and published by good ol' Squeenix, Quantum Conundrum is a 3D first-person puzzle platformer with more emphasis on the puzzles than the jumps. It is impossible to play even the briefest moment of Quantum Conundrum without the average experienced games player noting that this game sure does feel an awful lot like an extremely sanitized version of Portal. And boy howdy is there a good reason for that. Kim Swift, previous 30 Under 30 honoree and visionary designer of Narbacular Drop, the game that would eventually mutate into the critically and commercially acclaimed Portal, helms the director and lead designer roles for Quantum Conundrum. So if this game feels a wee bit like Portal, That's because this style of puzzle platforming is Kim Swift's specialty. The chief gimmick employed in Quantum Conundrum is dimensional shifting. Players have access to multiple dimensions that affect the puzzle chambers. For example, there is a dimension which makes level elements light as a pillow for easy transport, and another which makes items so heavy that they have the material composition to withstand the brute force of a laser wall, amongst others which I'll leave as a surprise for interested players. When entering in the most puzzle rooms, a disembodied voice of one Professor Fitz Quadrangle rings out GLaDOS style to introduce puzzles, tell some sciencey jokes, and provide exposition related to the world, your family, and himself. To maximize the top-flight, almost grating nerdistry on display, the professor is voiced by John Delancey, most well known in the nerdosphere as the man who portrays Q in the Star Trek series. While I often find myself enjoying the meticulously crafted puzzle box zones with their unique challenges and dimension-shifting antics, I find the set dressing of a wonky eccentric scientist and flagrant jargon-soaked sesquipedalian vernacular abhorrent. And yes, that phrasing is a joke, but I mean it. I wonder if he talks big to try and prove a point about his intelligence to a family member who he knows won't actually ever care. Regardless, Quantum Conundrum proves in a roundabout way just how good Portal really is. The eerie setting and sardonic tone paired with interesting characterizations take a great puzzle game and amplify it by magnitudes. For Quantum Conundrum, the game we're talking about, from a mechanics and design perspective, the game similarly, Portal-like, soars with interesting and interwoven mechanics and fun puzzles, but from a framing perspective, I find it all a bit trite and tiring. Kim Swift clearly has the sauce and thrives in this first-person puzzling environment. Drink More Glurp is a party game designed in the perfect pristine image of our Lord and Savior Bennett Foddy. Glurp carries within it the regal design DNA of the viral mega hit often mythologized quirky gaming monster Quap, and a casual dose of some getting over it for ample flair. Those familiar with this style of rage-bait design crack cocaine meditations on the nature of video games know that the hook is derived from the inventive control schemes and moment-to-moment gameplay that makes players feel equal measures of frustration and incredible accomplishment. Drink More Glurp revels in this design philosophy but extends its roots towards a primary multiplayer focus and an overall reduction in profound livid rage that would accompany the more sinister getting over it types. Glurp then begs the question, what if Quap was multiplayer? An excellent question for sure, and one I would answer if I wasn't working at a mile a minute to craft this video. As you might imagine, I'm friends with the type of people who don't exactly move quickly or plan accordingly, so I rushed off down the limited single-player modes to get a feel for Glurp's control scheme and to mind palace the type of fun I would have if I made more responsible friends. In Drink More Glurp, players take control of these awfully round and monumentally goofy fellas with stubby legs and arachnid spindly arms. It is the player's job to navigate these awkward Andes through a series of silly minigames. There are two primary controls players must master, running and grabbing, just like real life. Running is performed by rotating the left and right sticks on your controller of choice, and grabbing is done by using the triggers. The right side of the controller controls your character's right limbs and vice versa for the left. Minigames take the form of races with either flat ground obstacles or steps, alongside other, more creative visions for competition that take advantage of this unique control scheme. Overall, after ample mind palacification, I can conclude that this game, with a group of ne'er-do-well scream buddies, would resound with the thunderous living room shaking excitement. As a single-player outing, there are challenges to complete and time trials to master, but mileage will vary on if you find that enjoyable based on each individual's connection and affability towards the control scheme. If you have a buddy who already owns this game, it may be worthwhile, but if you, like me, are rushing to concoct one of the most videos of all time, well, maybe look elsewhere. Sound the alarm, gang. We have a roguelite on our hands. A roguelite is on our hands. Caveblazers is an action platformer roguelite which includes progressive unlocks, permadeath, and unique variation on each attempt down into the caves. Caveblazers carries on the tradition of roguelite royalty Spelunky in its base mechanic, setting, and challenge, but fails to reach even the shoulders of the giant it copies. Caveblazers in no ways is a poorly made game or even, bad. However, in a world where time and resources are becoming more scarce, and this is a direct call out to my primary nearly 30 demographic, why would you waste your time with an imitator when the real deal is just as readily available and offers more depth and reward? But if you are balling on a budget like me, then Caveblazers ticks most of the same boxes for currently less than $1. Caveblazers has responsive controls, fun loot drops, variable equipment from run to run, and combat that is fast and fluid. Enemies are enormously dangerous, which makes for a fun amount of tension, especially when the health bar begins to deplete. There are more than enough unlocks to keep invested players returning to discover exactly what this game has on offer. If that sounds like a fun use of your time, then Caveblazers will serve you well, you roguelite addicted freak. Peggle has the audacity to ask a question most games and developers lack the courage to even conceive. What if video games were perfect? Built on the back of The Price is Right's flagship gambling game, Plinko, a hearty acknowledgement of Japan's favorite not technically gambling and somehow totally legal pachinko, mixed with modernity's need for more and dripping with swag in excess. Peggle's approach to maximalism walks so Balatro could run, and real ones know what I'm talking about. Peggle released in 2007 but didn't cross my attentive gaze until 2012 when it received a port to iOS devices. From my perspective, that moment caused Peggle to take off like a wildfire just after your ex-girlfriend thoughtlessly flicked a Marlboro NXT into the easily ignitable brush. Not like I'm speaking from experience or anything on that. Kids in my class with access to iPod Touches became hot commodities in the social hierarchy because good gosh darn did we all get addicted to Peggle. Peggle is a physics puzzle game that tasks players with hitting all the red pegs before they expend their armory of little silver pachinko balls. This task is easier said than done due to the abundance of blue pegs which impede players on their mission. On the board there are also green pegs which provide basic individualized super moves for each of Peggle's dozen or so characters. To add an additional wrinkle to the proceedings, there is a basket surveying the horizontal field of play. If a player lands their ball in that basket, they get another shot. Similarly, if a player hits enough pegs to raise their score over a certain threshold, they too receive a free ball. When players whittle the board down to the final red peg, the camera zooms in to make the moment land with maximum excitement, or in some cases, devastating disappointment. This confluence of mechanics and ideas make Peggle one of the most inventive, hype-generating, and addictive games ever. You may find this ridiculous, but I think Peggle, from a mechanical and presentation perspective, is one of the finest games ever crafted, and deserves a place amongst the pantheon of virtual heavy hitters. If you haven't played Peggle or any of its sequels, you're truly doing yourself a disservice. If you have played Peggle, well, go play it again. You're welcome. In a previous Steam sale video, I mentioned that I didn't want the whole thing to become a Devolver Digital rundown. However, with such heavy purchasing restrictions placed upon myself by my McChicken rules, the pickings are as slim as level-headed reasonable bachelors at a Fish concert. So I have for you today 5 games published by good old DD. Reigns is a resource management game. Kinda. Reigns, on its face, is an incredibly simple game with uncomplicated mechanics and an easy-to-understand gameplay loop. However, Reigns utilizes these simple mechanics to create instances of intense subversion that liven up the moment-to-moment gameplay and keep even the most rock-solid and confident rulers a bit off balance. In Reigns, players take control of a cursed monarch ruling over a fictional kingdom. All gameplay occurs on this one screen and revolves around players making decisions about the fate and state of their kingdom. NPCs will appear before your majesty touting about all manners of problems and questions, and it is up to the player to decide on 2 unique Tinder bumblified choices. Swipe right for option A, and left for option B. At the top of the screen there are 4 meters which must be managed: the church, the people, the army, and the money. Each choice impacts these meters either positively or negatively. The game does you the kindness of pinpointing which decision affects which meter, but does not tell you if the impact is negative or positive. Herein lies the fun of the gameplay. Players must intuit based on the available information presented in the immediate cards, as well as information from earlier in the run, to ascertain how exactly the kingdom is impacted. If for any reason one of these meters drops to 0, well, that's game over. A finale screen appears explaining the monarch's rule, i.e. the number of years ruled and their nickname. And from there, the next monarch picks things up fresh. If this was all Reigns had going for it, I would definitely come down a bit harsher, but Reigns succeeds in often subverting the expectations of this simple presentation. All sorts of interesting characters and scenarios crop up regularly, some of which have the potential to wipe out either the kingdom or result in the monarch's imminent death no matter how impeccable the 4-metered metrics. Overall, the real draw of Reigns is to interact with all these weird characters, see the interesting scenarios, and witness all the heinous ways your ruler can meet their proverbial maker. Really, there is an achievement counter in the menu that tracks every unique way death befalls the monarch. Reigns is a relatively short game, so I would only recommend it to folks who are really vibing with this aesthetic, gameplay style, and short pitch. I adore the Metroidvania genre even if I despise its name. I adore Hollow Knight, Axiom Verge, Guacamelee, and of course, well, Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. For that reason, I am allowing myself a 30-cent buffer to talk about Gato Roboto, a minimalist black and white Metroidvania starring a cat in a mech suit. I first played Gato Roboto in the fall of 2019 in a university townhouse rented by one of my friends after one of my then roommate's girlfriends hurled a lamp at my head during a profoundly disturbing manic episode. I mention this small anecdote to put you in somewhat the same headspace as myself. The same headspace that almost was lacerated by that fucking glass lamp. In that zone, I sat on the sun-bleached couch and devoured numerous games and TV shows, and during that multi-week college idiot haze, I beat old Gato Roboto twice, once taking my time, and a second time going as fast as possible. Gato Roboto is a game which wears its massive Metroid influence proudly for all to see. Hell, in the promotional artwork for the game, the titular Gato, that's Spanish for cat, FYI, is donning a set of clothing that resembles almost exactly Samus Aran's power armor from Metroid. You can see this influence in the game's design philosophy and art design as well, such as at the start of the game jumping down a chasm that forks right to a metallic room very reminiscent of Super Metroid's intro, or stomping through a room that calls upon the imagery of the NES's Metroid's Final Gauntlet. In essence, these influences are the lifeblood of this game, but don't be confused, Gato Roboto delivers some clever twists on these tried and true ideas. Gato Roboto's primary twist comes in the form of ejecting from the mecha's cockpit. Once ejected, the player can navigate the world as just our heroic Gato. In this form, enemies one-shot kill you and force players back to their last save point. This subtle tension makes these sections incredibly memorable, and make returning to the mech, jingle, blaster, and rockets and all the more satisfying. This interplay between mech traversal and combat alongside exposed kitty puzzle solving is Gato Roboto's primary submission to the Metroidvania Walk of Fame. Furthermore, Gato Roboto is a game that begs you to keep the pace up. At the bottom of the screen there's an ever-running timer for enterprising speedrunner sickos. This is another callback to Metroid which keeps time but not quite so garishly. All of this is then wrapped together in the total Metroidvania package. You have upgrades, you have special items, and sensible and methodical backtracking alongside a brisk pace that focuses on the 2D action-adventure combat exploration hotness. If you, like me, occasionally get that itch, that forever lurking sickness, that Metroidvania mega desire, then maybe consider giving Gato Roboto, or Cat Robot, a try. During the 2025 Steam Autumn Sale, I happened to stumble upon the game Tower Wizard. Tower Wizard is like Cookie Clicker if Cookie Clicker was made by God. Tower Wizard was so perfectly executed that it made me rethink my growing minor disdain for the incremental clicker game genre. So it bears to reason that while perusing the depths and dregs of what God's digital grace has on offer, I would stumble upon another incremental game with excellent reviews. To quote the game's Steam store page, Spaceplan is an experimental piece of interaction based partly on a total misunderstanding of Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time. This is a hilarious hook for a game, and with the Tower Wizard afterglow, I expected to be in for a treat. Unfortunately for me, the things that make Tower Wizard excellent are nowhere to be found inside of Spaceplan. Like I mentioned, Spaceplan is an incremental clicker game. If you're new to that genre, let me provide a brief pitch. The goal of incremental games is to make the number huge. What the number represents isn't particularly relevant and only serves to fit the fiction of the game. Players will begin by clicking on an icon repeatedly to generate the number in small increments. After accruing enough of whatever points, players can purchase upgrades which create additional passive number generation. Rinse and repeat, make enough number to purchase upgrades to make making the number bigger easier. Spaceplan does not deviate from this formula. What it brings to the table is an interesting framing device of building a potato society on a distant planet. To do this, players must generate a big number, in this case joules or watts depending on your option screen preference, to send probes and whatnot down to the big red dot in the center of your screen. Small white dots are indicators of growth on your orbiting planet and directly affect number generation. To fully band-aid rip off my implications thus far, Spaceplan is boring and convoluted, and the in-game likely calculus-derived economy number and beginning curve is all sorts of out of whack. To put this into a more damning context, the whole time I have scripted this segment, I have left Spaceplan running in the background. I now generate an additional 100 number per second, almost a 50% increase, 43% to be exact. My next major upgrade is still a dozen minutes away. Oh joy, what a day once I get my next big upgrade. Anyway, to directly provide my recommendation criteria now, if you enjoy incremental clicker games, this is exactly that. Don't let me yuck your yum. Follow your bliss, babe. Follow it all the way. Well, good gosh darn everybody if I ain't hootin' and hollerin' after this one. Cosmic DJ is a completely rudimentary, that's not a word, rudimentary music mixing game with somewhat post-ironic sensibilities. Gameplay consists of dropping instrumentals over pre-made tunes. Players utilize a variety of pre-selected instruments to embellish over the cut, he says, hoping that means to add on top of without actually looking it up. Basically, you hear a track and then add some new instruments on top. You can accomplish this by either mashing the buttons to the beats or by entering into grid mode and individually dropping each note on quarter beats. I love this to death. Even if the songs at the end aren't anything special, the act of making something creative and individualized just can't be beat. I had to force myself to stop playing because after the first hour of gameplay, I had completed only 4 unique songs. This is mostly because I sat in the tutorial for about 15 minutes without recognizing the tutorial wasn't the actual game. I mention this as a point of praise. The tutorial screen was so fun, I couldn't stop fiddling with it. The actual game has a moderate amount of storytelling to propel the player to create these tracks, though you don't need to give me a narratively cogent call to action for me to embellish on the track, he says, again refusing to see if he's a fool. These narrative moments are goofy and match the game's tone, which is tongue-in-cheek from the moment the game begins with the whisper deep voice so-and-so telling me about stuff my soul is already aware of. Regardless, I think Cosmic DJ is a cute but simple game which hooked me from the opening moments, but if you are someone who already owns a proper digital audio workspace and think that this is the digital music equivalent of a colorful Tower of Hanoi, then there isn't really much to see here that you can do on your own. If you just want a fun music and rhythm game to toy about with for a few hours, I think this pretty sufficiently fills that role. I make it a habit to know as little as possible about games I am definitely going to play. The way I see it, if I'm gonna play a game, no matter what, then there's no reason to seek out any additional information. After all, by virtue of putting fingers to controller, I will experience the game all the same. Well, games under $1 that don't look like slop are slim pickings in which I look perfectly put together and confident, so I slapped it into my cart, happy that I found a colorful 2D platformer for my compendium-style Steam sale list. Those of you with ample amounts of deductive reasoning already know the punchline that is set to follow this elongated and elaborate setup. Witcheye? This Eye is a colorful 2D action game where you control a floating witch's eye with flicks of the control stick. This eye then hurtles around the room bouncing off enemies and level geometry alike. At any point, players can press the A button to stop on a dime to reset for the next control stick flick shot. In no way would any of this be considered platforming. Instead, the challenge manifests twofold. One, in controlling the eye as it rapidly bounces off every which way and every what thing, and 2, defeating a litany of unique enemies with gesture bouncing action as a form of attack. Combat and movement are inherently linked together, so by mastering movement you also make headway in understanding combat. But why is this witch's eye bouncing to and fro with reckless abandon? Well, that sure is a segue into the story portion of this review vignette. Our story follows the titular witch and her doubly titular eye as they track down the supposed hero of the kingdom, who, in the intro cutscene, is sent off to make your life hell, and boy do they, by stealing all of your witch's potion brewing supplies. To successfully procure the Purloin Potion products, players navigate through zones consisting of a handful of levels which conclude with a boss fight which rewards one of the stolen supplies. Boss fights are the highlight of my time with Witcheye. This eye. They provide interesting challenges and test the player's adeptness at utilizing this unique control scheme. Overall, Witcheye is a fun, casual, cozy time that has the occasional moment of intense skill expression. Despite not being a platformer like I erroneously assumed, I still jumped right into Witcheye. Is that joke dumb? I didn't think it was too much of a leap. Okay, let's take a quick hop, skip, and a jump to our next game. If you don't like that one, you don't like NBA basketball, and by NBA basketball, I'm talking about me. You don't like me. Come on now. After all, this is the spring Steam sale. How about that one? Yeah. Guys, these jokes have boundless. Also, I'm sorry I said guys. I'm assuming. That's my fault. Boundless potential. Fine, we're gonna stop, and I'm gonna put all the rest of these puns in the vault. Get it? Pole vault. Okay. Next game. I'll have what she's having. I don't know why I said that. I don't usually do these sorts of mid-video pitches, but I feel like I jumped out my proverbial Overton window of allowability in this instance. If you're enjoying this video and want to learn about some more cool games that are currently on sale, I recommend checking out my videos covering the autumn and winter Steam sales. Many of those games featured in those videos are currently on sale and not bound by my McChicken's Thesis. That is, they're on sale but more than $1. Anyway, enjoy the rest of this video and feel free to boot, scoot, and boogie to those later if you're interested. I am a man of the people, so when I began constructing my list of games to overview for this video, I made a commitment to myself to feature the first less than $1 game on the Steam Spring Sale page. In comes our big winner chicken dinner, or I guess, in this case, winner duck dinner. Placid Plastic Duck Simulator, say that 10 times fast, is exactly what it claims to be. Nothing more, nothing less. I have a hard time feeling upset about this, however. In PPDS, it's a little easier. The ducks are placid, and boy, are they plastic. There is no gameplay necessarily to speak of. Instead, you just sit back and watch the ducks float about in their little pool and listen to music. I was blessed with a song eerily resembling but legally distinct from the notorious B.I.G.'s Juicy, but with lyrics about rubber ducks and reading positive reviews by the pool. I am certainly telling on myself here, but my constant acquaintance with subversive games made me suspect to any oddities which may lurk beneath the surface. And if you seek something, so you shall find it. I find this game eerie as hell, despite it not actually being remotely eerie in any respect. It definitely is the surrealist visuals and music matched to a gameplay-less game. Like, something has to be up, but the second shoe never dropped. Instead, all that dropped were additional rubber ducks from the heavens, each with their own visual flavor. To conclude, yeehaw, ducks. For the sake of thoroughness, I want to do a rapid fast rundown of some other games I saw that were less than $1 during the Steam sale period. Some of these games are awesome and worthwhile, but ultimately just don't fit the overall vibe of this video. More than anything, this rundown is to head off some know-it-all comments at the past, who certainly will mention these as glaring omissions. I saw them, folks. I swear I saw them. Please don't sick your dogs on me. Black Desert. Currently 99 cents, developed by Korean developer Pearl Abyss, Black Desert is an MMORPG, or MMORPG, for those who know. Earlier I mentioned that Placid Plastic Duck Simulator was the first game on the main store page for less than $1. At the time of writing and purchase, that was true. However, that title of First Up now belongs to Black Desert. The reason we're not covering this game in more detail is in the genre name. Massive. This is a video about weird little games at the end of the day, and it's quite frankly, it's just way too much of a time commitment for this video's scope. All these Hitman games. I love Hitman, or at least I love the idea of Hitman. I've never actually played one of these games, but I had a blast watching the Funhouse gang wreak havoc inside of them. Similar to Black Desert, I think Hitman is not a great fit for this particular video. Nothing more to it. Postal 2. Whether Postal 2 is a meditation on the nature of violence or revels in it is not for me to say. I think questions related to Postal as a media franchise and cult hit deserve much more extensive deep dive than a rudimentary overview, and by including it here, I fear it would take up most of the video by itself. SteamWorld Dig and the OG Binding of Isaac. Both of these games are excellent, but you already know that, don't you? I'm leaving the door open to cover these games' sequels in the future. Metro Last Light Redux. I have a coworker who swears that the Metro games are the best first-person shooters on the market today. He is occasionally right about stuff, but the fact that this mainstream man is aware of this game's existence doesn't make it particularly weird or little. However, I have purchased the game now and will report my feelings on the matter directly to him in the form of a friendly coworker conversation interaction. Leaves the Journey is a game with an excellent sense of style. The art direction is eclectic and fully realized with a healthy mixture of realistic iconography alongside surrealist imagery. The art direction pairs excellently with a fantastic sound design from the ambient and worrying hum in lieu of proper background music down to the individual Foley effects for the different puzzle elements. I lead with this praise because despite this killer audio-visual execution, Leaves the Journey is let down by usual point-and-click puzzle frustrations. As I mentioned, Leaves the Journey is a point-and-click puzzle game in the same style as Myst. Players will navigate through this beautifully rendered world by clicking on arrows on the periphery of the screen to shuttle themselves to different landscapes. Along the way, they'll procure items for use in puzzles scattered across the interesting world. There are two types of puzzles present. First are puzzles where you find an item which serves as a key to unlock a path. The second type of puzzle are the brain scratchers. These are puzzles that require the player to put their mental mettle to the test as they survey the problem. Both types of puzzles present critical flaws which we must address. The first type of puzzle, the key item puzzles, require lateral thinking to ascertain if any of the player's inventory could possibly serve as a solution. For example, there's a metal grate blocking a descending ladder. The only way to remove this grate is with a shepherd's crook. Or this weird hole in the wall which requires the player to use this moss dome object. These puzzles rely on the player navigating to their inventory and trial and error pinpoint puzzle solutions. Rarely does this feel rewarding, instead feeling more like labor. The second type of puzzles, while much better, suffer from poor execution as well. For example, I solved this initial puzzle by creating the image, but the orientation of the image I created was incorrect, so I had to meticulously move every individual piece around this pie until the game agreed with the orientation. This took more than 10 minutes of busy work for a puzzle I effectively had already solved. Second, this puzzle with rotating tiles next to the vines. I correctly solved this puzzle almost immediately, but the game refused to acknowledge this. I even looked it up to confirm that in fact, yes, I did solve this puzzle correctly. The only way to get the game to recognize my minor miracle achievement was to rotate every single piece on the board until some arbitrary triggering event occurred, clearing the way forward. To sum up these frustrations more succinctly, Leaves the Journey pays for every crime Myst ever committed. What I'm saying is, from my perspective, unless you're Putt-Putt traveling through time or Freddy Fish swimming along, I don't think it's possible to make a frustration-free point-and-click game. If these sorts of trial and error esoteric puzzle boxes are your thing, and you haven't given Leaves a playthrough, well, I'll just leave you to it then. There's not, I think that's the last pun in the script. Okay. Walter Machado is a developer that creates retro-inspired, fast-paced 2D action indie games, and aside from having a very public photo showing his very impressive lats, real recognized real Walter, he also has bundled a number of his releases for literally pennies, and I mean that. 4 games for 49 cents, which is absolutely the steal of this video. After playing these games, I took it upon myself to purchase his most recent release, Bloodsaint 2, for the astronomical price of, you guessed it, it's 49 cents. But before we get into each individual game, I want to take a moment to look at all games in aggregate to examine Walter Machado's design philosophy as I see it. After spending some time with 5 of Walter Machado's video games, I feel I can confidently explain what exactly makes these games work so well. The first cornerstone of Walter's design philosophy is small games, simple ideas, phenomenal execution. Walter's games do an excellent job of shuttling the player directly into a flow state, a term to describe when difficulty perfectly matches player's skill. The flow state is the goal of many games, but very few nail the butter zone the way Walter's games do, either because they're too challenging or too easy. Well, brother, these games aren't easy. But thanks to the score attack nature of the games, improvement is never far off for any given player due to the scores being set by, yourself. The second tenet is the utilization of score attack. To compensate for the bite-sized nature of the game, score attack modes are present to keep players testing their mettle either for individual pride or to weigh their achievements against their physical or digital peers. Herein lies another design pillar, intrinsic motivation. Walter's games do not give any rip-roaring excessive illustrative narratives to compel players to play the games, instead favoring a more Spartan approach. Players must motivate themselves to play either because the game is fun or they want to best their previous high scores. By allowing the player to ordain their own motivation, the friction present in the game design becomes a mountain for the player to triumph over because they want to do it for themselves, not for any narrative or completionist sickness obligations. Put these three pillars together, small games, big execution, score attack modes, and intrinsic motivation, and oh my lord, we have a Parthenon on our hands. Look at all those pillars. Now, with the core design philosophy understood, let's talk about the games. Bloodstained 2. Let's start with the most recently released game. There's a motorcycle just idling outside. We're trying, don't they know that this is serious business? Okay, it's gone. Nope, it's not. They're revving. They're revving. Let's start with the most recently released game before we jump into the Mega Steel Bundle. Bloodstained 2 is a quintessential Machado masterwork, bite-sized, skill-intensive, addictive, and straightforward. In Bloodstained 2, players move with the WASD keys and aim their blaster with the mouse. Players must remain in the circle and defeat waves of enemies. Upon clearing a wave, the player is offered one of two upgrades that increase firepower or provide other passive boosts. There are no words or explanations for what these things are, which is a-okay because runs are short and in no time players can memorize each upgrade from their imagery. BS2's lightning fast pace and fun power-ups make for a great small game. The first in a major series which spans 8 Steam releases, Ubermosh is another top-down shooter that features its own spin on the genre. Instead of surviving waves and receiving power-ups, players are on a timer to accumulate score. To make number big, players deflect incoming enemy lasers with their katana tied to the right click and loot these same defeated enemies' guns to blast away with left click. Ubermosh's simple controls quickly take root and the game begins to feel like an ornate dance between deflections and blasts and beautiful level geometry navigation. Ubermosh is fun, all caps. I can see why such a clever and fast-paced game has so many follow-ups. While maintaining the controls of the previous two games, Quickerflak is not focused on making the number big, in fact ideally the number remains small. Gone is the typical score attack replaced with a timer. In Quickerflak, players are tasked with navigating increasingly difficult ultra-hard shooter levels. To succeed, players must reach the glowing circle without getting massive blasted by shotgun chumps. The difficulty arises from the fact that it only takes a single hit to end your run. With these simple mechanics understood, players are free to approach each level challenge as they see fit. Do you want to run and gun down your foes? Would you prefer to beeline to the exit? How about laying down suppressing fire behind cover and taking it slow? It's up to you. Originally, I was only going to include the original trip to the Vinlands, but thanks to Walter's generous bundle, I got TTV2 for free, which works out because this corrupted surreal single eyeball businessman is sick as hell. That's going in the thumbnail for sure. In both Trip to the Vinlands and its sequel, TTV2, actual title, I am not the one abbreviating it, players take control of a businessman who has to navigate their way out of the brush. To navigate out of the Vinlands, players must avoid the encroachment of both nature and machinery. Making contact with anything will immediately end the run and force the player back to square one. Every run begins with the same intro screen, but from there the order of boards is randomized. This allows every attempt to feel unique and prevents the player from utilizing any basic memorization to game the game system. One minor critique is that when transitioning screens, let's say exiting screen right, if the player does not immediately halt pressing the input upon entering the next screen, the character runs directly into danger. Muscle memory must be created to stop pressing buttons the moment the character clears a screen. I lost far too many runs for this reason, and I know, just get good, I get it, I always hear get good. Otherwise, TTV, I'm the one who abbreviated it this time, created the largest flow state for me, which is a major achievement. This is easily the most super hexagon of all of Walt's games. Can I call you Walt? All of Walter's games? I'm sorry. Which is about as big a compliment as I can award anybody. Speaking of which, for the first time in this channel's history, I'm double dipping. This may constitute a full-blown party foul. We would have to take this to council for proper litigation to be certain. Regardless, I am double dipping by covering a game I have spoken about in the past. Super Hexagon was the concluding segment for my video covering Terry Kavanagh's bespoke indie game collection, Terry's Other Games. While Super Hexagon isn't one of those other games, I felt it offered me an excellent opportunity to play a new game that I had only heard wonderful things about. Well, kids, and by kids I mean folks more than likely pushing 30, Super Hexagon is on sale for less than $1, and if you didn't take my gospel truths as cosmically ordained then, well, maybe you will now. Super Hexagon is perfect. Super Hexagon is a design masterwork that successfully teaches players by doing. In my original review, I stated that Super Hexagon made me feel like I was a person capable of learning how to do hard things. I stand by that statement and echo it now. Initially, gameplay comes at you fast, but over time, and with each successive run, players will improve their mechanical mastery through a combination of muscle memory, improved reflexes, and a new natural acumen which ascribes to Super Hexagon's teaching style. For more information, please see my review inside that Terry's Other Games video. Believe me, I gushed enough about the game there. To conclude on this matter, please play Super Hexagon. Is this a Toho? That's a genuine question. I'm not doing a bit. In my head, Toho is any bullet hell shmup, or shoot 'em up for those who aren't initiated, with anime girls stapled onto the facade. If my mental record keeping and clown definition is correct, then we sure got a Toho on our hands, or at least something wholly Toho inspired. For this rock solid and unimpeachable definition and realization, I am granting myself the Toho Specialist Subtype Knowing Stuff Badge of Honor. In Murasaki, players take control of one of two color-coded anime girls through 5 stages of increasing difficulty and complexity. Gameplay consists of top-down bullet hell shmup action. The gimmick present is that the level geometry is locked in place and does not scroll like a more traditional top-down shooter. To add to this boxed-in level design, players are only permitted one laser blast on screen at a time, with the addition that this shot can bounce off the top of the screen. There's no twin-stick shooting here, the only direction to shoot is up, so maximizing this bounce is critical for eliminating enemies that migrate into your blind spot. The first level concludes with a fun boss fight that has just the right amount of bullet hell challenge for me. After that, players are rewarded with a litany of collectibles before being granted access to Level 2. Level 2 begins with your character getting obliterated by this nonsense volley from a purple-haired anime girl. And that's the end of the game for me. I tried numerous times to find a way through this massive impact blast, but couldn't make it happen. You are fully permitted to now strip me clean of my Toho badge I previously granted myself. The Enigma Machine is a short atmospheric horror game about traversing the mind of a corrupted AI. When I was doing my preliminary research finding games on sale for less than $1 the morning of the Steam sale, I operated under what I thought was an astute assumption that any game currently on sale would remain on sale for the same price once the sale actually began. So when I saw the Enigma Machine on sale for less than $1, I celebrated and literally let out an audible "let's go" that made my cat, Bill, all caps, almost jump out of her skin. The Enigma Machine and its follow-ups have been on my radar for the past few months and I was stoked to check them out. Well, egg on my face, literally minutes prior to the Steam sale, the Enigma Machine met my criteria for this video, but once the sale rolled out, the Enigma Machine's price jumped from less than $1 to a startling $2.49. So, in a literal sense, including this game is breaking the rules. But in a more pertinent, spiritual sense, I think it fits the bill, all lowercase. That's a callback to my cat's name being Bill, all caps. Anyway, we're continuing. For those of you who have watched my previous videos, you know that I am one of the softest, most sensitive little babies when it comes to suspense and horror. But the presentation and narrative theming of the Enigma Machine were far too enticing to me, so I suffered through my actual full-blown terror to give the Enigma Machine the attention it deserves. In the Enigma Machine, players take the role of a raid trainee, RADE, an individual who is responsible for inhabiting the minds of corrupted artificial intelligences. This type of corruption is expected to become more common as the Enigma Corporation is slated to roll out new immensely more complex AI OS with a heightened risk of this type of corruption. The player, as a green trainee, is tasked with undergoing a series of modules led by DIM OS, an AI tasked with getting new recruits up to speed by simulating different common scenarios a raid officer may encounter. The Enigma Machine delivers its narrative and gameplay through two modalities. First, there are these segments that take place on computer terminals where the guiding AI provides information about your mission. During these moments, you can type in queries to request more information about the world and your new best buddy AI training friend. After getting your fill of information, you can type in the level number to explore. Here's the second gameplay style. These manifest in first-person, eerie, atmospheric PS1 retro graphics-inspired horror puzzle boxes. Inside each level, the player is tasked with finding codes to plug into the terminal to unlock the next level segment. This interweaving of the two disparate elements works shockingly well, and narrative and gameplay slowly start to intermingle into a complex, perfect hodgepodge of ideas. To take a breath from the praise and offer a constructive piece of criticism, this game is too damn dark. Like, I can't see what I'm doing dark. It makes sense to utilize lighting to generate additional tension and heighten the mood, but if I can't see where I'm going, it breaks my immersion, because all I can think about is how do I increase this gamma on this son of a gun. Now back to our regularly scheduled gushing. I don't want to spoil too much, as the Enigma Machine has some excellent moments which are best experienced for yourself, preferably with over-ear headphones on and lights off. Of course, I played with no headphones and at 10 AM with sun cascading through my windows because I'm Charmin Ultra Soft. Metal Slug 2 is currently on sale for $1.39. Now, I ain't no mathematician and I ain't got all that fancy East and West Coast book learning, but even I, the humble landlocked planeswalker, know that there pricing doggonna is done more than one buckaroo. Thanks for putting up with that character, which is called literally just my uncle and cousins. Anywho's what's it now, Metal Slug 2. I just really wanted to play this game again. I got the itch, and by gunna, I'ma scratch it. Real good now, you hear? I can't stop, they've taken over me. Metal Slug 2 is a side-scrolling action shooting game which is sick and slick as hell. I love Metal Slug dearly as a child, finding this type of gameplay electric, cathartic, and pulse-pounding, and I can proudly report that those feelings exist even today. I had a blast re-experiencing the mission mode in Metal Slug 2. The controls are responsive, the levels are well designed, and there are ample difficulty levels to allow more experienced players the opportunity to test their skills. With Metal Slug, what you see is what you get, and if this looks as fun to you as it does to me, then I think throwing a buck and change Steam's way will make you too feel the joy and exhilaration of Metal Slug's short and bombastic runtime. As is tradition, now that we have covered this Steam Sales Wondrous Bounty, I'll provide my almost definitive rankings. Why almost? Well, because I'm a simple fella who changes his mind literally all the time. Did you know changing your mind is actually a sign of growth? And not a sign of weakness? Wow. Anyway, even though this list will be in reverse recommendation order, that does not mean any of these games are meritless. In fact, not everybody has to like everything, and it is almost guaranteed that a game that isn't to my taste may better match your own predilections. For that reason, for each ranking, I will also describe who I would recommend this game for. And, final note, this was the toughest group of games to rank yet. I feel like the margins are incredibly thin between the top 10 or so games, so don't take these rankings to heart. Let's begin. We begin with an honorable mention. Dropsy is a point-and-click puzzle game that I started but did not finish for this video, despite it currently being less than $1. I feel it would be terribly unfair to give a half-hearted review of a game with so much to offer. From what I have played, Dropsy makes me think it's possible to make a point-and-click puzzle game that appeals to me. Make of that what you will, and we'll certainly be talking about Dropsy more in the future, so stay tuned. A game in the loosest sense, Placid Plastic Duck Simulator is not a hidden sort of horror game like I gingerly hoped it would be. It really is just a game where the ducks are placid and plastic, and you sure watch them. I recommend this game for people who have TVs in their office and need something to put on in the background while conducting business. That way, your clients or coworkers can see how quirked out your gorge you are. Interesting game with potential. It's a shame I'm the worst to ever do it and kept getting ganked off rip in level 2. I recommend this game for people who know what Toho is. Spaceplan undid all the good work Tower Wizard did for my perception of incremental games. The game has an interesting hook, but the in-game economy feels tilted in the wrong direction, and the lack of intriguing mechanics leaves Spaceplan feeling like a promise left undelivered. I recommend this for people who like incremental games despite knowing the genre's flaws. Leaves the Journey is a beautiful game from an audiovisual perspective with a striking art direction and sharp sound design. The pieces are there for something truly special. However, Leaves the Journey brings the regular point-and-click fare, which does not appeal to me. I find the proceedings too trial-and-error centric and frustrating to navigate. I recommend this game for fans of the point-and-click genre, or people who are neutral to point-and-click games but love this particular art style. Caveblazers is a standard 2D side-scrolling action roguelite with solid controls and meta progression, but does not do enough to separate itself from the pack. I recommend this game for people who like roguelites. Reigns offers a unique take on resource management, storytelling, and decision-oriented gaming. In a way, Reigns is also a roguelite with death and rebirth and runs, but I wouldn't blame you for not wanting to place it inside the genre because of how outside the box its presentation and gameplay are from its peers. I recommend Reigns to people who like interesting sparse game mechanics and experimental narrative and gameplay hooks. My experience with Drink More Glurp was definitely not optimal. After all, this is a party game that I was forced into playing in a single-player mode. Regardless, I got a taste of Glurp's unique QWOP-like control scheme, which was enough for me to mind palace a world where this game is super fun with friends and say, I don't know, a party setting? I recommend this game for people with friends who are good at planning events with each other. Cosmic DJ was the game I had the lowest expectations for from this field, however I had an absolute rip-roaring good time making simple, pounding electronic beats. The heart wants what the heart wants, and apparently I have a techno-inspired song in mind. I recommend this game specifically for me. Gato Roboto is a fun, short Metroidvania adventure starring a cat who pilots a mech suit. Gameplay is sharp and introduces some interesting spins on classic Metroidvania ideas. I recommend this game for people who like the genre or are looking for an accessible entry point. Metal Slug 2 is badass. Side-scrolling action blasting gameplay paired with a rocking soundtrack and tight controls. This is a classic for a reason, and I am only somewhat sorry for including it on this list despite it costing just north of $1. I just really wanted to play Metal Slug. I recommend this game for people who have more than $1 and like retro arcade games with style and punch. Witcheye, this eye, that's the third time I've made that joke, kids. This game is not a platformer, and that is a surprising blessing. Witcheye has unique controls, solid level designs, and massively fun boss fights, on top of decent replayability and Devolver digital polish. I recommend this game for people who like novel control schemes and fun, fast-paced levels. Walter Machado's games are all included in this one numbered bullet point, mostly because the main bundle I purchased, which contained 4 games for 49 cents, is the definitive way to acquire these games, at least for the moment. Walter's games succeed in developing fast-paced, score-oriented, intrinsically motivated game action, often in the form of top-down shooters. To sub-rank this ranking point, my favorites in reverse order are Trip to Vinland 1 and 2, Bloodsaint 2, Quickerflak, and my favorite is Ubermosh. I think these games are great pickups for anybody who enjoys small minigame-esque retro-inspired games with a hardcore tint. Quantum Conundrum is a rock-solid first-person 3D puzzle platformer with emphasis on the puzzles. Designed by Kim Swift, the person who created Portal, that design DNA is abundantly apparent. While not quite being as good as Portal, or Portal 2. But let's be fair, that's an exceptionally high, almost unreasonable bar to get over. This game is still an excellent entry into the genre and worth a play for anybody who thought Portal was cool and good. Speaking of which, Bridge Constructor Portal, while not a legacy entry into the acclaimed Portal series, still makes use of the Portal set dressing in enough unique and interesting ways to make this game feel like the next evolution of Polybridge style gameplay. I recommend this game for people who enjoy physics-based puzzle games or who are interested enough in Portal to try something new just as a lark. The Enigma Machine is an excellent retro-inspired first-person horror game with an engrossing plot that had me on the literal razor's edge of my seat for the roughly 1 hour runtime. The Enigma Machine is a game which has a lot more to offer than what appears on the surface. I recommend this game for people who enjoy horror games or people who, like me, avoid all horror games unless they're like really cool and interesting. I hate doing this. I really do. Believe me, I tried to move it down the list. I tried to think of an out for myself to place it further down, but I just couldn't do it. I'm a man of principle, and I must stick to my guns. Peggle is perfect and one of the best games ever created. I would be a liar, a freak, and a charlatan if I turned my back on Peggle and my convictions. Peggle's simple to understand, difficult to master, maximally designed, almost slot machine-like gameplay prints dopamine so efficiently that if you could bottle Peggle and convince yourself selling the cure to human unhappiness doesn't make you actually Satan, well then you'd become the world's richest person, now wouldn't you? To conclude, play Peggle. Super Hexagon is like Peggle if Peggle somehow was more perfect. Super Hexagon is a game that is hard, like really hard, but with effort, improving at the simple gameplay is one of the most interesting and rewarding gaming trials I have had the pleasure of experiencing. Super Hexagon's sterling design, language, mechanics, and killer soundtrack all work in tandem to craft one of the finest small gaming products on the market, and for less than $1, I genuinely believe there's nothing better. After you play Peggle, you should play Super Hexagon. And that's all for me today. That was just a bunch of games, huh? Can you believe the original version of this video featured 4 additional reviews for games that I all caps hated with a fiery passion? I had this moment of clarity when playing Turbo Dismount specifically that made me question why I was putting myself through playing games I don't like when I have free will and can play games I do like. This occurred to me after I had already written blurbs for the games in this video. Maybe if I played Turbo Dismount earlier, this video would have been shorter. Who knows? With that said, I'll see you back here next time for more video games, specifically ones I adore with my entire heart. Please stay tuned for a brief afterword about my previous uploads and other updates. Thank you for watching that video. Always means a lot to me when people watch something that I made, especially something that was such an enormous labor of love. Steam sales started on March 19th. Today is the 22nd. It's very early in the morning when I'm recording this audio. The video is basically done. When I say enormous labor of love, I mean it. Probably 40 hours over 3.5 days. That's a lot. I just really wanted to get something out in a timely manner so people would be able to take advantage of this video and the others to make some good purchases during this sale period. Lots of cool video games out there to play. The main reason I am here, well, there's a few reasons. This is a little rambly. Y'all who have been here for a while know I get a little rambly. First, I have a bunch of cool videos. I've already mentioned in the mid-roll on this video that I have 2 videos covering previous Steam sales, both the autumn and the winter sale of 2025. But my other videos are also good stops. The video I just released about the Rat Zone has a bunch of cool games in it, and by a bunch I mean 3, and they're all on sale, so check that out. I talked about Super Hexagon, which is on sale. Terry's Other Games is on sale as well. I have a whole video covering every single one of Terry's other games present in that bespoke indie game collection. And then, I don't know, check out some other stuff. Let your heart lead you. Some notes about the video. Kim Swift, the creator of Narbacular Drop and Quantum Conundrum, was the design lead on Wavetail, a video covered in that Steam Autumn Sale video. I love Wavetail. I had no idea she had anything to do with that. She's just a winner, it seems. So I wanted to note that. I am aware. She's great. I know what mind palacing is. I made a joke about that in the Glurp section. Please don't tell me that I used the term mind palace wrong. I know. It was a goof. It was a gaffe. Walter Machado's games, they're on the list at number 5. They jumped around that list. They were as low as number 8 and as high as number 3. The reason that I settled on number 5 for them is because they're all so small and I treated them as a collection. They're great games. Don't let me putting them at number 5 make you think that they're not. Their small experiences and everything above them are larger experiences. Simple as that. The only other note I had on here is about upcoming videos. I have a review of an indie game. It's going to be about an hour long. It has a lot of analysis in it. And I mean real analysis. It seems like the term analysis has been co-opted by charlatans who are selling snake oil. When I say analysis, I don't mean summary. Then if I have to watch one more analysis video that's a summary of something, I'm not gonna. What are we doing, guys? So anyway, it's a review of gameplay elements plus analysis, and there's a bit of a summary in there going over story stuff. You have to have that. That'll be out in about a month. More Wind Waker stuff, of course. That initial Wind Waker video really bombed, and that has been discouraging, to say the least. If you're interested in the Wind Waker stuff, go watch that video where I go over every single side quest in the game, weighing their pros and cons against each other. There will be another Wind Waker segment soon. I just need to polish some stuff up. And then the very, very final note, I said the last thing was the final note, but you know me, I'm a little scatterbrained. This video, since I worked on it so hard, and I've been looking at it basically nonstop for 3.5 days with not my every waking hour. I've done chores and fed myself and those sorts of things, but I've spent a lot of time on this video. I've grown to hate it. I think that's normal to start to hate something. Just the harder you work on it. I got sick of hearing my voice, and I felt like I was putting it on a little bit. All of this to say, the reason I made this video is because people watched the Steam Autumn Sale and Steam Winter Sale videos, and they were so popular. This video exists because people watch those. So we'll be back for summer if this video catches fire. Maybe that summer one I won't put it on so hard. I feel like I was writing in a parody version of my own voice on this one in a lot of spots, which is odd. Again, I've been staring at this nonstop for so long. I've been talking for 5 minutes. Man, I don't think I have a credit scene for 5 minutes. We're probably going to watch me play Ubermosh during this, and you'll know if we've been watching Ubermosh. Anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you for watching this video. Go check out the other stuff if you want to. Stick around if you're interested in long reviews about things, and if you're interested in me doing a summer version of this type of video, the Steam sale, let me know. Oh, and leave recommendations for cool games. I have a folder for all the cool games people have recommended me. Last Steam sale, someone had recommended me Orbo's Odyssey, so I played it in that video. Similarly, I've purchased a lot of games that y'all have recommended, and intend on covering some of them in the future. They just didn't fit the scope of this $1 gimmick. Okay, I just keep talking. Goodbye, watch the other videos, stick around if you're interested in other stuff. Okie dokie, bye-bye.